All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us for a new episode. We're going to be talking about the Blob today. And I have a special guest. I have Jonathan from Vintage View Cinemas. And he's going to be talking about the Blob with us today.
Super excited to do this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this movie's great.
Yeah. See, so for me, I think, and I had mentioned this before, previous in a conversation with you.
Yeah.
But people put this on the top, remakes of all time.
You got three, it's the 80s.
Right.
So you got the three mega remakes in the 80s.
That's it. And I can't diss The Fly and say that that's not the greatest one for me. But this is second.
It's the most respected one, I would say.
Right? And people will say, "Oh, Blasphemy, The Thing."
Yeah.
And for me, I know we're diving right into this, but for something about The Thing is not as iconic. I don't know what it is about this film, but we're gonna get into it, right?
Well, yeah. Well, I think also when it comes to The Thing, it is great and everything. It is purely a John Carpenter film, but I think that the baggage that comes with having a Cronenberg film, and typically I feel like there's a little bit more. I'm not knocking John Carpenter, but a little bit more substance behind the meaning of the film itself.
Sure.
And I feel like that's what you get that with The Fly, that you're not getting with the thing, even though they're both great. And I will say I probably like The Thing more, but I do understand why people say probably The Fly is the best if you're grading it or whatever,
right.
You know what I mean?
So, The Thing crawled so that the fly could fly.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, then the Blob came and was like, I'm just going to wipe you all clean.
No, yeah.
Right. With this amazing sci-fi action, horror.
It's on the tail end of the 80s.
Spectacular film. This is so excited to talk about this. Let me tell you.
When you get to the Blob, it's in the same remake category, but the film can't be far from The Fly and The Thing. It's not the same kind of remake.
No, it is. Well, look, here we go, right? When's the last time you saw the original?
It's been years, man.
Right?
Years.
So
I think I watched on Turner Classic Movies probably when I was 14.
I was going to for this episode, right? And then here it is, and I considered it, and I was like, right? Because and they mentioned this in the director mentions this in every interview that I saw on this Blu-ray. Mm-hmm. I watched. Man, when's the last time you did a DVD commentary?
The last one I did was, I think when the Big Trouble in Little China commentary. That was probably about several months ago,
right? Worthy of sitting through it. So I took a 20-year time travel to pop in a DVD commentary for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
Right. Even though I loved it when DVD commentaries came out. Right. And I did that today with this, and the director talks about how he's like, I love the original. It's a classic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have a hell of a lot going on for it other than Steve McQueen.
Well, that's true, because that's the thing is the most shining thing in that movie is Steve McQueen, his charisma, and that's the whole when he's on screen, you're intrigued because he has it. You have it or you don't, and that guy had it.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
But what I think is also problematic about the Blob is that even given Steve McQueen the heroic role of the film, right? The one who figures it out that you got to use cold and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That fool is still trapped in a diner for a good 20 minutes at the end being help me, police and fire department, right? So literally they are the ones who truly save the day by the end.
Yeah.
Right? So Steve McQueen is kind of a helpless victim at the end of this movie, right?
Yeah.
That is not the case with this film. This film is we're going to give you multiple heroes.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And one of them is going to be progressive, and it's going to be a female.
Yeah.
And she's right up there with Ellen Ripley.
100%. Yeah.
Shawnee Smith in this film?
Yeah.
Badass, right?
Yeah, that's the thing is even though Brian, Kevin Dillon's character, comes and saves her, but it wasn't, she saved the town.
It's well,
you know what I mean?
The two of them through the whole movie, it's tit for tat.
Yeah,
basically, like I'm going to save you, now you're going to save me. Like and it works so well because there's a. I mean, are we jumping into this? Is that what we're doing?
No. I wanted you to before we get too deep. I do want you to talk about vintage View Cinemas. And so forth, and we can talk about the Crypt Con.
Sure. Yeah. So Vintage View Cinemas is my business. I am a mobile cinematic events basically production.
Yes.
So I go around Baltimore screening the films that I love and that I think that other people will love to see from our past. A lot of it 80s, 90s, but like truly it's more than just the film on the screen. There's a cinematic experience that I felt like was missing here in Baltimore. Like I spent 10 years living in LA, working for Disneyland, doing special events for them, and going around town. And it almost felt like not just every weekend, but like multiple times during the week, there'd be some sort of cinematic event. And I use that word, very specifically because it wasn't just what was on the screen. There'd be, like people coming in costume. There would be pre-shows. There would be an environment that was celebrating film and the theming of whatever movie you were about to see, or a double feature, things like that, to the point where you felt immersed in that entire night and that film. There'd be a photo location and a backdrop, or maybe even a character, like somebody dressed as a character would show up to these events at Beyond Fest or Hollywood Cemetery, and I was so enthralled by that I started doing my own screenings there in that realm in Southern California. And then when COVID happened, I decided to move back to my hometown here of Baltimore and felt starved for that. That wasn't something that I was seeing anywhere. Now, credit where credit's due. There's, Mondo Video out there, and they're doing some great, amazing, underground VHS screenings. And, the Charles and the Senator are doing throwback films and stuff like that. But I didn't feel like there was any type of theater in the sadly only 6 theaters left in this city that was solely dedicated to like the nostalgia of our past. I felt like the things, clearly all of this, right, that we watched on a 13-inch screen as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We didn't go to the theater that much because we had it at our disposal, whether it be on cable or VHS or DVD eventually. And I was like, I would love to bring that cinematic experience that I experienced over in California to Baltimore on a everyday scale, So for me, my mission with Vintage View Cinemas is to not only do that in a mobile fashion in which you can book me for your backyard parties, your outdoor events, but I'm also going to bars and breweries, which we'll talk about with Crypt Video Con, and doing these same kind of cinematic screenings and experiences, with the hope that one day my mission is that I can bring a new independent cinema to Baltimore, like a physical standing structure that people can go to on a every night basis, every day basis, and experience these type of movies.
I will say, I like the bar atmosphere, because I'll tell you what, when I do go to end up going to a bar and I find there's a TV on and it's playing something like me and my wife went to Josie Rose's and they were playing Saturday Night Fever. I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. This is a perfect bar and it's got a great movie on. Like, okay, yeah, I'm going to sit around and I'm going to have a couple more because I want to watch the movie.
Could you hear the movie?
Yes.
Oh, you could hear the movie. I was going to say
there wasn't a lot of people in. There was 6 people.
Sure,
in there.
okay, because I was going to say that in the experiences that I have, that if there's something on, but there's music from the jukebox happening or stuff like that, I'm still watching it. Maybe there's subtitles on, maybe not, but a lot of the films that they choose to put on, I know anyway. So I'm just there being like, yep, I love this scene, stuff like that. So to be able to bring that, but in a an environment in which like it's very chill, it's very lax, and you can drink, you can get food, and we're not sitting there in a stuffy theater in which like everything's cookie cutter, you know, like, and that's what I feel like the movie theater experience has gone, like 10 to 16 screens in which we're all sitting in the same recliners, and you know the experience is exactly the same. Like I love drive-ins, right? I love the ability to go, you know, and make you pull into your spot and you make the experience your own, right? And while I would love to open my own another drive-in movie theater for this state, I realized that like, let's start a little bit smaller. And that's where I came up with this intimate, like, let's do like a small, like kind of like a micro cinema, maybe a couple more chairs than that,
like a
you
pop-up
know?
cinema.
Yeah. But to a point where you go to the same place, you know where it is, like, and you can sit there and you can drink and you can relax, and you're not going to sit there and have to fully worry about somebody being like, right? Because like I want people to make each experience their own. I want you to be able to come into the theater and pick the seat that you want, because all seats are different. They're all vintage chairs and couches and things like that. And I want you to be like, oh man, I love the red chair. Let's sit in the red chair. It's very comfy tonight, right? Yeah. But you're not going to fall asleep like you do in the recliners at the regular cinemas, right? And you're going to sit there and you're going to make it your own. You're going to grab a beer, you know, from the bar, which is going to be inside the theater, you know, instead of like out in the lobby where like, if I get more than one drink, if I miss the movie for this, I'm an alcoholic, right? But so like I love the concepts of being able to serve the people and give them what they want in a very laxed environment, and we're all there celebrating a film on the screen, whether it be a single feature or hopefully double features, which was an amazing grindhouse concept, you know, back in the day that like I think is lost due to capitalism.
Well, also, well then go into talk about Crypt Con, because you're going to be that's where you're going to be showing the Blob.
The Blob, right? It's like almost like we planned this, right? Yes. So Crypt Video Con is the latest version of an amazing idea from Tapes from the Crypt owner.
Yes, which I have
Tim Groschel.
I have my Under Wraps Tapes from the Crypt hoodie and my Tapes from the Crypt Halloween 3 hat.
It's and
great stuff he makes.
And not only is he making amazing merchandise, you know, for people to buy for things that we love as horror fans, but in 2019 he came to LA with the idea. Him and Retro Release Video put together a pop-up video store, and that's how we met, because I was doing my own podcast at the time, and they asked me to host some screenings that they were doing there, and that grew and grew into multiple pop-up video store experiences in Philly, and now we're taking that experience to a whole nother level with like over 25 vendors, food trucks, you know, a beer release that we haven't even announced yet. Hopefully by the time this is out, that beer release, which is like the final announcement for us, right?
Okay, cool.
Multiple screenings, and now like talent such as the Found Footage Festival coming to this 2-day experience that we basically decorate the entire bar out to look like the mom and pop video stores from your past.
Oh yeah, it's great. If you've seen a Crypt Video Rental or before in the past, you've experienced, and it's wonderful. It's definitely a step back in time. And just it's a community of great people. You know, and just being passionate and sharing things that they love. It's awesome.
100%.
Awesome.
And that's, I mean, how I got involved with this team is the same way that most people that are helping or volunteering or working for Crypt Video as a whole got associated with it, is that like we're all just bonding over movies and establishing a friendship there and being like, hey, how can we help each other grow?
Yeah,
you know? Exactly. And it's such an amazing cohesive experience in that way.
Oh, 100%.
Where like for me, I wanted to get Vintage View, you know, their name out there. And so I reached out to Tim and was like, can we bring Crypt Video to Baltimore, where I feel like, we met through Crypt Video.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And didn't realize that we're 20 minutes away from each other, and I wanted that type of community to be a major foundation for what Vintage View will be one day.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I want us to be 60 drinking, just hanging out in our living room, which is my theater, just me and my friends. I started realizing that the community that's happening within VHS, within collecting media as a whole, there's so much camaraderie there, and just being like, you see this? No, I haven't seen it yet. You should see that. That whole thing, and then coming back to report on it, being like, oh man, I did see it the other night, is such a cool thing that I just want that to grow here in our city.
Oh no, yeah, I 100%.
Yeah, so to bring Crypt Video Con here and to allow it to blossom and be bigger than we've ever attempted before is super exciting.
Oh no, yeah, it's going to be fantastic. It's January 13th and 14th. If you're in the DMV area, is at the Peabody in Baltimore.
Peabody Heights Brewery.
Peabody Heights Brewery.
It'll be open noon starting on both of those days. Screenings for the Found Footage Festival will start at 5:00. And then it's a double feature that day. So it is Found Footage Festival and John Carpenter's The Thing. And then the Blob will show us a single feature at 6:00 on Sunday.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we got into this discussion with the Blob.
Yeah.
Because we looked at the lineup of what we're offering, because the whole theme of the event is Attack of the 80s.
Yeah, and you gave me the option. You're like, we could talk about a remake of the Thing, the Fly, or the Blob. I was like, oh, let's do the Blob.
For sure. 100%, right?
Because this movie, I saw this movie when I wasn't into horror, so it made a huge imprint on me because it freaking terrified me. It was so for some of the listeners, they know, but I didn't really start watching horror until I was 13. So I was always too scared for scary movies.
Okay.
I was going over to my friend Seth's house and they wanted to watch Gremlins. And I was like, no, that's too scary. That's too scary. And his mom would be like, no, Logan, it's not really, it's cute. It's not scary. I'm like, I don't want to watch it. So everyone was watching it in the living room and I was just sitting in Seth's room all by myself playing with toys.
Right.
But it wasn't until the first horror movie I ever saw was Scream. And then the second horror movie I actually sat down and watched by myself was Friday 13th, and I was 13.
Okay.
But I saw the Blob probably at 10.
Just for context, how old are you?
I'm 34.
You're 34. I'm 40.
Okay.
So for me, I grew up in a very progressive, when it came to movies, household, right? So what I mean by that is my father was a cable guy. And so basically whatever came on cable, we were VHS pirating that.
Oh yeah.
Right? Everything was just hit record. Usually hit the time, set the timer up for a Friday or Saturday night, whether we were in the house or out, there it was. 3 movies premiered every night, every Saturday night on HBO. And then we would review them and be like, okay, we're going to record over this one, or we keeping this one.
Gotcha.
Right? So with that came I'm not going to sit here and tell my kids to go to bed while I watch this thing, right? Especially because it became very event-like for us, right? So it became, well, we're going to watch this together, and if you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
Yeah.
Right? And that was so informative on my childhood, right? So the first one that I can remember watching was Cameron's Aliens.
Yeah.
Right? To the point where after that movie came out, my mom was a little concerned, being like, should they look away at certain parts, right? But we were cheering as kids, to the point where we would ask my mother to do the iconic line, afterwards. We'd be like, say the line, and my mom would be like, get away from her, you bitch, and we'd be like, yeah,
I will say, and Aliens was one I saw before. I saw Aliens before I saw Alien, and then Aliens was
so too.
Was one I did handle better because I was big into 90s, 80s action. So my family, and it wasn't like my parents didn't allow me to watch horror movies. I was scared of them. I was a little scaredy cat.
Sure.
So that was keeping me away from watching them. And then when I watched The Blob, I came across on satellite one day, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to watch this. And I noticed it was a obviously wasn't the original, because I knew about the original from like watching like Tiny Toons and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Like,
I think I had seen the original when I was younger too.
Yeah, I mean, it was always made references
right?
to and
Sci-Fi Channel or something like that.
Yeah, so like I remember watching this, and I remember it gets to the scene with the hobo and him trying to cut his hand off, and it scared the shit out of me. And then I was like, okay, then I did the thing where like I turned away a couple of channels, I wait a couple bit, and I turned back to it. I was like, all right, what's happening now? Okay,
Yeah, right.
That's usually how I used to watch movies when I was little.
Sure.
So I did that, and then I got to the point where it was well, we'll talk about it later.
Sure.
But when we got into the doctor's office,
Okay. We're definitely talking about
with
that.
Paul. Yeah. So that's when I was like, okay, I can't watch this. I turned it off after that one. Because it was just I don't know, like watching like Rambos and I don't know, like Predator was another one that was like pretty graphic.
Oh yeah, we watched Predator a lot, and probably shouldn't have, because you're right.
It
Predator
was
very graphic, like ripping the spines out.
Oh yeah,
and
I even I go to RoboCop. Like I loved RoboCop because well, I watched the TV show on Sci-Fi.
Oh yeah.
I used to watch the TV show on
yeah.
Sci-Fi, and I used to and then because I would watch RoboCop, and then I would watch The Flash. It would be RoboCop first, and then they would play The Flash.
Yeah.
And then I finally like, oh, the movie came on, and I turn on the movie, and it gets to the scene where they're at the warehouse. I'm like, and they just blow him to pieces and blow his hand off. I'm like, oh, this is not like the TV show.
Sure. Meltman is in both this and The Blob.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go back to Aliens real quick, right? When we talk about like sci-fi action, there is something where like hyphenate that one more time. Sci-fi action horror.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that both of these films are in that same vein.
Oh, yeah.
Just where like I didn't find them. I can totally identify with those who do find it scary, but I found it more enthralling because I was like, here are these, whether it be Aliens or The Blob, here's this unstoppable like thing that doesn't care about your emotions, doesn't care if you're afraid or like if you beg for your life or something. And like all we can do is try to figure out how we stop it, and most likely fail, except for our major female heroine.
Yeah,
right.
True.
And so for me, whether it be Aliens 2.5 hour like epic, just nonstop, like Aliens gives you maybe 10 minutes to breathe every action beat, right? Before it's like, oh, here they're coming again. They're coming again, perfect. Right? And this one does the exact same thing about 20 minutes in. At the diner, once a diner happens, like you ain't got much to breathe unless you're being revealed about the government.
And like when we were talking about earlier, I was bringing up pacing in movies, and like this movie has great pacing. Yeah. You don't get bored, you don't get tired. The pacing
doesn't let you get tired.
Well, and I think that's a big thing when it comes to making movies is like, you can take, and like this kind of conversation we had off camera, but you can take a movie that is like a B-rated movie that shouldn't be good, but if it's got good pacing, you're more interested in watching it, and you're like, hey, this movie wasn't that bad because it had a story and I didn't get tired, even though it's a crappy B-rated movie. You know what I mean? Like, so like, I feel like movies with good pacing, sometimes movies with good pacing can turn them into a good movie when they're not a good movie.
Sure. 100%.
And I'm not saying that this is that kind of film, but the pacing here in this film is fantastic.
Oh, they could have lost this. This could have been like Roger Corman Cheese Fest. Yeah. Very quickly.
And also it's an hour and 35 minutes. Perfect timing.
Tight.
Perfect, nice and tight. I think, to be honest, I'm a strong believer in like horror films. I think they need to be nice and tight because, like one movie I do like a lot, but I feel like it drags. Have you seen The Intruder?
No. Wait, is that the Sam Raimi? The grocery store?
Yeah, but he really didn't have anything to do with it.
I saw that a couple months ago, actually, for the first time.
But what's like, you're 45 minutes in the movie before anything happens.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Right, I'm like, close the store already, because that's it.
And then once, and like, Sam Raimi's name's attached to it, so is Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell's in the movie for like, not even 30, like probably not even 60 seconds.
Right.
But
they
that's
just use the name. That's Little Shop of Horrors sales techniques there. The Jack Nicholson one.
Yeah. He puts him right on the front of the VHS, and then you buy it, and he's like in it for like a second.
He's the Bill Murray role.
He's Bill Murray. Yeah. But
so yeah, who? Let's get into it. Who gave us this gem?
So we got Chuck Russell. He is the director, and then it was written by Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont.
Darabont. Yeah. Writer of Walking Dead.
Yes, he did Walking Dead. He wrote a crap load of his
Shawshank.
His like. I don't know, it was like almost like I feel like it was like almost like 80 different movies.
Yeah,
Screenplays that he's wrote,
right? But you can see the connections to him and some actors in this film, as well.
Oh yeah, because The Walking Dead,
right?
Yeah, and then like
Dale from The Walking Dead.
He did three different Stephen King movies. He did The Mist, yeah, and then he did Shawshank, and then Green Mile. He wrote the screenplays for all of those. He wrote the screenplay for Fly 2. Mm-hmm. He did, and
another very underrated sequel.
It's very good. Yes, the special effects aren't as good as the original, but it's still a good movie.
It's a good monster movie.
Yeah, it's still a very good monster movie. Yeah. You get a little bit less changing and stuff like that, but still what's on the screen is still pretty to look at. So and also it's got good acting. It could have been a B-rated crappy sequel, but actually it's not.
No.
It's pretty solid. It doesn't, it's not a Cronenberg film, but it's still a good movie.
Right. I don't think they were going for psychological, we're not going to blow the guy's head off and then roll credits. Yeah. But anyway.
But no, you're fine. But then and then Chuck Russell and Chuck Russell and Frank, they also worked on Nightmare 3 together.
Nightmare 3.
So they went straight from Nightmare 3. And then they get into this.
Yeah. And he talked about on his interviews on the Blu-ray about straight up being like, the way I got into the business of directing and not just assistant director or producing things like Dreamscape and things like that. He goes, is that I walked into New Line and was like, I have a script I want to make, and I have the rights. I want to make the Blob. Mm-hmm. Right. And they read the script and they were like, I don't really want to make this, but you came in here with balls, and confidence that you want to direct, and we got this other film of this franchise that we don't think is doing too well anymore, right? What can you do? What can you put your spin on it? And
which is crazy because I love Nightmare 2.
Yeah.
I love Nightmare 2.
Absolutely.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Nightmare 2 before it became a whole, the Scream Queens came out. You know what I mean?
Because I think, for me, Nightmare 2 was the one that USA or USA Up All Night would play the most.
Yeah.
Right? So I iconically remember the opening bus scene. That type. If I see that kind of bus on the road, I'm like Freddy.
Well,
which barely you never would anymore. But I see it in a junkyard or anything, I'm like, Freddy.
Well, the scene where he's pressed against the wall and he comes out of his stomach, and then
the stomach, the shower scene,
dogs, the dogs at the freaking
the weird
end.
Freddy face dogs. Yeah, right.
That was a great movie.
All of it, plus even back then, while I didn't know what. As a child, I didn't know what homosexuality really was, right? But I was like, this is different. This is literally, this is something about it that is sending to me that there are themes here, the BDSM in the shower, the fact that he goes to a gay bar, the fact that our heroine is now a hero, it's the roles are completely reversed.
Yeah.
So much of it felt completely different to me, even as a child, that then when I watch it as an adult and I'm seeing things that they're denying to this day, are I didn't write it that way. And I'm dude, if you didn't, then I don't know what to tell you, because like I'm saying, as a child, I was like, this is not your typical horror movie, and I liked it even more.
No, that. And I will say,
eventually we'll get to the Blob, folks. I promise.
No, yeah, I mean, I'll wrap that up, but it was.
Right, but that's how he got it. Basically, that's how he got exactly. He got Nightmare 3, right? And that was a huge success. That they made more money than the first two combined.
I mean, it's going on. People say it's the best one. Best sequel.
It's a hell of a lot of fun, right? Yeah. And the things that he said in the interview that he really wanted to invoke was that he was super into, and he feels that he's one of the few people that can actually lucid dream. So he wanted to really channel that, take the power back of your own dreams, right?
Yeah,
and clearly that is the entire theme of the movie.
Yeah.
Right. Take the power back from Freddy. But he also said that he wanted to really like play upon like the victimhood of the children in the asylum, that like obviously Freddy was making it like most of their like deaths look like suicides.
Yeah.
And he wanted to really like send that home, that there was like, that kind of issue going on in America and things like that. And what I really love about this interview was that he goes into detail about that this film allowed him to make the film of his dreams, the one that he wanted to, the one we're supposed to be talking about. And so like his whole message by the end of the interview was to future filmmakers was like, you don't have to compromise on your dreams, but you might have to they might have to take a back seat while you accomplish this one thing that's going to get you to your dream.
Yeah, I saw that quote. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was doing the research.
Like, wow, this is really cool. This is like, especially because like his resume directing wise isn't huge.
No, not at all.
Right.
I mean, he did Nightmare 3, The Mask after this.
Right.
That was a big success.
Probably the biggest.
Yeah. And then he did Eraser. I like Eraser a lot, the Arnold Schwarzenegger film. So he can do action.
Right.
Like obviously, I mean, The Blob, but you can do a pure action movie. But yeah, it's not like, it's not like he's got 20 films underneath his belt.
No. But so like, yeah, come 19. Well, that's a crazy part about this film too, is that like they started working on January, they wrapped in May of 88, and it was out by August of 88.
Yeah, I know they shot during they shot during the winter because that was a big issue with filming, because they did a lot of the scenes outdoors and they didn't want to get breath. They didn't want to get the breath on camera.
Yeah.
So they the actors would have to chew ice cubes in between takes so that you couldn't see their breaths, because it's supposed to be October, but it's like February, I think, when they started filming.
And what's interesting also is that like big town shots all were in Louisiana.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So that's where most of the film takes place, is in Louisiana.
But then at the exact same time, like all the forest stuff and all the like sewers and the theater itself is all California sets.
It's on sets,
and Griffith Park, the same place that hundreds of films have been shot, like they were talking about, I don't know exactly what shot it was when they were talking about it. They were like, yeah, literally like if we push the frame over 2 more steps, there's the tunnel that Marty McFly chases Biff down in part 2.
Basically, anytime they're indoors, 90% of it was done on the set, and then everything outdoors was done in Louisiana.
What another interesting thing that I heard them talk about was like window shots from like they're sitting in a diner. All the window shots, like everything there is just a scaled down miniature of the street from Louisiana, where they just took reference photos.
Well, most of the special effects that Lyle Conway, that was his job, was to make the miniatures to do the Blob. He did anytime you see the Blob when it's clearly a mass, that is him. What's called, and then Tony Gardner is doing the special effects anytime someone is basically being killed, eaten, like the dishwasher scene.
It dissolved.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, like the dishwasher scene, the hospital scenes. That's all Tony Gardner. He has the biggest stamp. Like when you watch the film, like they're saying like special things to his special effects. But when you actually seen the Blob in the sack form, that was Lyle Conway, and he came up with the technology of creating the Blob. It was silk sacks filled with methanol.
They called it the prom dress.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, all right.
Well, silk, with that jelly in the silk, it would ooze outside, so you wouldn't even know it's a sack.
And
that was the whole cool part.
It starts with an M. I'm gonna
Methicillin.
Thank you. Right, the stuff that they like make milkshakes thicker with. Right, which is very close to KY jelly, which they use. Somebody that too, also did a story about being like, I would have to make like runs for more, KY and condoms. Because they had to put condoms on their fingers to do the like effects or something like that. He goes, so like anytime I would send somebody out, I just imagined that they were just like the scene in the movie where like they're completely embarrassed. The rib. So I could go all day long about the special effects on this film.
Well,
like everything.
It was revolutionary because the same way they built the Blob and maneuvered it, that was the first for this movie, and they reused that technology for Ghostbusters 2.
Sure.
At the end of the scene where there's a blob.
Yeah, right.
Was taking over the museum.
Right? Yeah, and all that.
They learned that from this movie.
Sure.
So that, I mean, it's pretty cool. Like when you create something new. It's like, I guess, like the thing about like the first time someone created the first bladder effect, and then people just use it in everything.
Squibs, the Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Right. Jurassic Park.
Well, I think
everything.
The first movie to use squibs was Bonnie and Clyde. Did you know that?
Sure.
I learned that. When I went to college, I did take a couple of film classes, and I never knew that. And I'm like, Bonnie and Clyde?
I didn't know it. I think it was like when you say it, I'm like, sure, that makes sense.
I think because the shootout at the end, that was the first time someone ever got shot, and you literally saw explosions underneath their body. And I was like, really? This movie? I think it was 1976. So it was like, they didn't come out before then? I could be wrong with that date. I don't think the movie is from
when I referenced Dawn of the Dead, something about Savini perfected the squibs for that. Or
he definitely did, like, there's definitely a bunch of revolutionary shit. That
I'm not going to pretend to know everything about film.
No, I don't know everything. Then also, if you watch the show long enough, I get things wrong. So.
Sure, right? and then they're ready to correct your thing.
Well, lately, when I find out I did something wrong, I just put in the episode. I'll just put, I was wrong.
Like a pop-up video. No, I was wrong. Right there.
I just put text. I was like, I was wrong.
Nice. Okay.
I did like the Ernest Scared Stupid. I'd said something about the advertisement that Ernest did, and I was like, I think it was this, and it was like, I just put, nope, I was wrong.
It happens.
But yeah, this movie it's so cool because even though this movie, when you watch this movie, it doesn't feel dated. It takes place in the 80s, early 90s, right? But there's nothing that says that about the movie.
Other than the film grain on the fake movie they're watching.
Yeah. And then,
literally nobody picks up a phone.
No.
Nobody, there's nothing, not even, one thing, right?
Are you talking about the payphone?
Not that, well, okay, but you know what? I still will hit it like an old town on Route 66 and see a payphone there.
Yeah.
Like, nobody using it, but it's there. No, it's Kevin Dillon's shirt throughout the movie.
You mean his Gaston shirt from Beauty and the Beast?
Gaston! No, it is.
What is that?
It's Jerry Seinfeld's puffy shirt from that episode. It's the pirate shirt.
No, I was looking at it and I was like, what? It's got... I'm like, where are the buttons? Who would be wearing that? Like, I don't know. The leather jacket's cool, but that shirt.
Way cool, but I don't know whose choice that was. I mean, with his mullet and everything.
The mullets are back. The mullets are back. The mullets are back. Yeah, they're back.
I mean, but for how long?
There's 3-year-olds walking around with mullets now.
Well, that's just parents not wanting to cut hair, man. The shirt. That's it, really, truly. Yeah. That and maybe walking around with a Letterman jacket.
Yeah.
That's about it.
And that was, I mean, but when it comes to that, it's so cool because it's weird. Like I said, it doesn't feel like an 80s movie. And I feel like this movie is, because of that, and sometimes when movies are too dated, especially I'm a big into comics, and sometimes when you're reading a comic from the 90s, it's hard to get through because it's so dated based off the dialogue.
Sure.
There's none of that in here. There's no dated, super cool dialogue that kind of was supposed to be for the times. Mm-hmm. And I think that comes down to the right kind of writing.
Sure. 100%. I have a kind of a litmus test for things where, when I get my own theater, what do I want to program for people, right? And one of those litmus tests is, can I sit a child down, right? And can I show them this movie? Let's say the child pretty much grasps everything. They're 10, right? Can I show them this movie and they have limited questions of the references that, the script has given, right? I can sit, I feel like even the fact that Back to the Future is dated, right? And because it actually is dated in 1985. Yeah. My litmus test is, will this child understand 75% of the film without me having to explain anything, right? And I think those are the testaments of a true classic movie versus being I sat him down with Scary Movie 4
Yeah.
and I had to explain why Tom Cruise was jumping on a couch.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of stuff where it's just like, it's super dated and a very specific thing to get a reaction from like that audience when it was in the theater that year. Right? And those are the kind of things where you're like, this doesn't hold up. Like
Yeah.
none of that holds
Well,
up.
that's what you bring up. You bring up Back to the Future. I mean, Back to the Future screenplay is said to be the perfect screenplay that will, and no other screenplay will be as perfect as that movie screenplay.
Amazing.
It is lectured in film school of how to write a screenplay.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And and like the fact, like, and what some of the stuff you're saying that you're pulling from that, I completely agree. And I know no one's going to be talking about this screenplay, but I strongly feel like the way this movie was written, and it's almost, it has that immortal feel. Like this, 30. This movie was made 30 years after the original. Okay, I will say the amount of people that go back and watch this film, based off of we got another 30 years on this film, I will say more people go back and watch this film because of how timeless it is.
Sure.
Versus this film.
Well, even the themes in the film are kind of timeless. Like there's a conspiracy going on that's government controlled. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Right. But
when is that not going to happen?
Right. True. Right. But like, this is where like we just got over a pandemic. So we're talking about germ warfare possibly. And when all those conspiracies are happening, like the kind of themes that are running through this film are timeless. Yeah. After a certain point in our like history and our technology. Right. So like that going on, and just the fear of the like unstoppable thing, the thing that you're like, it's coming no matter, I can't stop it, like especially with like viruses and all that kind of stuff. Like you can't stop it. All you can do is kind of like learn from it, and hopefully it didn't get you before you learned how to stop it. And
it's good that the fact that this film actually explains what it is, and and you're like, okay, that makes sense.
But not too much, right?
Yeah.
Like, because when you really start thinking about it, if we get into like the government portion of it, you're like, wait, they launched it into space purposely so that they could test it on a town before learning how to control it, right?
Well, that was the point, was it mutated when it went through space.
Oh, I missed that.
Because there was one part where it says, where he goes, I knew bacteria would mutate through coming back from this, like going on in orbit and so forth. I didn't know a virus would, because that's what it is. It's a virus. That's why it is what it, because it mutated when it was coming back through the atmosphere or from the orbit parts. That's what they kind of like. They
still not understanding why they put it into space, right?
Well,
I think. We sent COVID into space and it came back, and yeah, right. Like, why would you do that? Yeah. So but that's the kind of thing where you're just like, don't look into it too hard, because you won't have any fun. Yeah, yeah. Right.
We're like, my thought process is like, well, what do you do now? Where are you going to put it? Because obviously, I don't think anything can kill it.
Right.
You're just it's gonna be like a Return of the Living Dead situation. You put it in a tub and someone opens it up.
Well, I love that's what to bring it back around. I love the idea of, they're like, well, we made this virus. What do we do with it? Anybody want to shoot it into space? They're like, all right, right, and that's it. And then like, whatever, right? Like I love the idea, and that really was like that re-emergence of like the space race and like dealing with things from space that the 80's kind of like were rechanneling, right?
Oh, yeah, because the whole Reagan era.
Right, right. And so I love this idea that like there probably was a government force that was like, hey, we got this virus and I got nothing to do with it. Send it into space, see what happens.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Well, that was everything's expendable, right?
Yeah, I feel like the whole point of them to doing it is they wanted to test it on a small town to see what the ramifications of that town would be. But they
thought it was just going to be like a sickness like COVID.
Yeah. But they didn't understand that it would mutate into a living, a virus is a living thing, but it becomes something completely different than a microscopical virus. You know what I mean?
Right.
It becomes its own entity kind of thing.
So yeah, like this thing crashes down like in this little town, and then the homeless man stumbles upon it.
Yeah.
And what I also love about this film, when it comes to just like from a cinematographer standpoint and shooting things a certain way, like we're talking about putting a lot of things in reverse
Mm-hmm.
that you don't really realize it unless you're like
Yeah.
thinking about those shots.
Yeah.
Like obviously, what referenced me to bring this up is like the blob when it's on the stick and then
Yeah.
it shoots into his hand.
Yeah.
That's all just like in reverse.
Or the same thing for the blob falling from the ceiling onto
Yeah.
Paul was basically they took a ceiling tile, put it on the floor, and they dropped the sack, so it looks like it's falling from the ceiling.
Super cool.
But it's actually just falling on the ceiling tile on the floor.
Or like what is it? We haven't talked about him at all. Is the misogynist his Paul's friend?
Oh, Scott.
Right? Yeah, right. And how when after it wraps itself around his arm, the tentacles like from her bra, like that next shot where it just dumps into his face is just like him lying on his back and they just dumped.
Yeah, they inverted the car and they just poured it on him.
Right?
Yeah.
Like and these are things where you're like, well, we could reference Wes Craven and the bed blood dump, you know, like, and those really iconic things that like now are still used, like these upside down, like we're going to spin the room, like Inception and stuff like that. Like these tried and true techniques that we take for granted because there's so much CGI nowadays.
Well, that was the funny thing is they sat there, they CGI was around when this movie came out, and only a little bit is used, and it's basically just to make the crystals shiny.
Right.
But like when they basically are making this special effects from this movie, when you watch the interviews and they're like, it's just basic, simple stuff. I mean, this is like this is kindergarten stuff for special effects.
We're over here being like, I love the blob, right? And they're like, dude, I've been doing this for like 20 years. Like, what do you want? Like, it's my job, right?
It's a guy underneath a sack moving it. That's
right?
all it was.
But all that, like that, and the miniature stuff, and like things that we had seen for years prior. Like you think about like Empire Strikes Back and all the miniatures and that, and like all the amazing like mat work in those kind of films, right? And here they are just using the same techniques, and you can't say it's seamless or flawless, right? Because they were picking it apart for 90 minutes. Like they'll never like be able to see. Like there was one point where Chuck Russell was like, he goes, oh man, like I wish I could just go in there and draw a couple of those matte lines out or digitally. And I'm like, don't do it, man. Like don't George Lucas the Blob.
No. I'm still upset that they removed the guy in the background from Evil Dead. There's when they cross the bridge, there's a guy in the background that was part of the crew that got caught on the film.
Oh, he was just hanging out.
They digitally removed him. I'm like, no, he needs to be there.
Don't do it, right?
Don't digitally remove him.
Anybody. Yeah, right. It's like a Blue Jeans guy on The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Somebody could be wearing jeans. You don't know. All right, so the homeless guy, he gets eaten up, and that's a really cool effect. Like when they reveal the blanket. Right? Yeah, that's your first like, whoa, what is this thing?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we're going to get into the other kills throughout the movie. Before we get started, though.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I felt like we were talking forever. And I was like, we've got to get into this.
Usually Becca reads the back of the VHS. You want to read it?
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, sure. All right.
You don't want to hear me read it. So.
All right.
The guest will read it.
More graphically realistic than ever, The Blob has returned in this horrific tale about a vile, malignant life form that crashes to Earth in a cozy rural American town called Arborville. Which is there a welcome to Arborville or sign or anything? Like I don't remember seeing it.
I know they verbally call it, and they say the name Arborville throughout the movie.
There might be something in the football, like Arborville,
probably, or something. I definitely know
Titans or whatever their.
I mean, I know when
was.
The scientists are talking, they explain it landed in so and so Arborville. Okay,
perfect. Cool. Because I was trying to focus on the title sequence, but like I said, I was watching it with the commentary this time, so I kind of just.
No, it's mainly just a bunch of it's a bunch of stock footage that they shot.
It's very Halloween 4.
B-roll. Yeah, it's very B-roll. It's just like, here's a picture of this. Sure. And it's funny because this looks like, so I grew up in a small town, and then the next town over was bigger than my small town, but still considered a small town to like Maryland standards.
Sure.
And that's how the square looks.
Right?
Literally, there's literally, it looks, the square's right in the middle, and there's just shops all around the center, and then it's got roads going here, roads going there. So like definitely they definitely fit the vibe of what they were going for. Small
Envious.
town virus. They
Envious,
nail
man.
it.
I had a shit plant. Like, you know, like,
All right, we got the
so
coal
let's
plant
do
right
this.
next door.
Yeah. Untroubled by conscience or intellect, the Blob does only one thing, and does it well. It eats anything and everything that moves. Men, women, children. And tonight, it wants to swallow Arborville whole. The original version of the Blob thrilled and terrified audiences back in the 50s. Now the oozing and gooey killer is back with a whole new high-tech 80s look. What was once only suggested now comes to life in this visually gut-wrenching thriller in the tradition of such classic remakes as The Thing and The Fly. 92 minutes, TriStar Pictures. Awesome.
Perfect.
Right? I mean, and that I'm sold.
Well, the funny thing is, like, and also I always noticed, like, it's weird, but like, you know, when there's movies come out and stuff like that, and like they make VHSs and stuff, like VHSs, and you'll find one movie that has 5-10 different covers. Mm-hmm. This is the only one.
Oh,
there's like no alternate versions of this.
Can I show you this real quick? Have you seen this? Right. So, I have very rarely seen a Blu-ray release that does a huge homage, like where they're like, we need to make sure that every image that you remember is covered in this,
gotcha, like the different posters and so forth.
So, like, obviously, you know, the U.S. theatrical poster, right? And then this is the alternate, like, you can flip it, right?
Yeah.
So I like to do that. Like, my slip will be one image.
With the Scream Factory, yeah.
Right, yeah. Like, Vinegar does that a lot, right? So I'd like to go to the original cover there. Boom, there it is, right?
Like, I got my Fog. They got the cool new one, but I like the original one. It's
right?
the original.
Every time, right? But I also being like, well, now I have both images to look at as I open this up for you, right? But then they were like, oh, let's make sure that we at least throw the two images, right, from the back of the box.
That's cool.
Like, it's right there. There's the old man, and there's the mom and the son, right? And that's all there.
That's cool.
So, like, that's really, to me, like, that's a little bit more attention to detail than a lot of other releases. Like the Thing 4K that I just bought for the screening as well, right? Just came in your regular black plastic box and no flip cover, nothing, like, and I'm like, that's a universal release. Like, put a little more effort into it.
Well, the Scream Factory people, they do a fantastic job.
Sure.
Fantastic job.
And that's shout out to we mentioned Crypt Video Con and our first screenings there in 2019. Justin Beam produced like more than half of this.
Yeah,
He's
that's
on
what you find
the credit
out.
roll.
These people these people that do these remastering, you think it's a big company,
man.
It's a small group of people that are getting the rights to these films and remastering them. And you think like Vinegar Syndrome, they have like a storefront, but like they are small. And the fact that you can go to a actual Vinegar Syndrome store. Yeah. Now, I think there's like only one. I think
there's two.
There's two.
One in Connecticut, and I cannot quote the other one. Sorry,
I don't remember. I want to say it was L.A., but I can't.
No,
remember.
it's not.
It's not L.A.
No, it's not. It's kind of another like small town type thing. I think it might be in Colorado.
Oh, gotcha.
But regardless, it's one of those things where there was a lot of attention to detail in this Shout Factory version. Like, the surround sound is really cool.
Nice.
And the soundtrack, which we haven't really discussed yet, just kicks.
Alien,
kicks, man. Like
that might date it a little bit.
What?
The soundtrack?
I think so.
Well, just because it is 80s.
No, not Alien, as in like the not the rock songs.
Okay.
Not Feel My Love, yeah. No, they're awesome though, but like they are hardcore hair metal, right? The score. That's what I mean. Yeah. The orchestration, right? Like, kicks in this movie.
No, it's very good.
Like, the orchestration to me adds a whole other layer to the element of the Blob itself. Like, it feels organic to the Blob. Like, I know that I'm hearing like strings and timpani and stuff like that, but it feels like it's something that's audio wise is coming from the blob itself.
Oh yeah.
Right. And that's just masterful, like writing, just being like it's the heartbeat pulse pounding, right? Like, and it just keeps getting faster and more crazy. And there's parts of that score that literally aren't even on beat with each other to make it more chaotic in a moment of just like in the movie theater, which I can't wait to get to the movie theater part.
Well, the crazy thing about this movie is there's so many things that were done well. It's got a good director. It's got a good screenplay. You just brought up the score is fantastic, and it sucks because it bombed in the box office. 2 weeks.
Because of TriStar, right? Like they were
changing
hands.
There was change hands, and they didn't want to deal with anything from the past. They were a clean slate.
And he was also so upset on this commentary. He's so upset about that too. He's just like, it didn't get the attention it deserved.
But also the movies that were in theaters were just like, I think it.
What were they?
Oh God, what was it? It's 1988.
August of '88.
Shoot, what was it? I looked up the list, but it was like, I want to say Beverly Hills Cop.
2.
I think it could have been the second one.
Had been 2.
And then, what was it? I can't remember. I'll put a list right here.
Sure.
But yeah, I think finished in like 10th or like 11th place, and it was there for 2 weeks.
That's
and they
a
just
damn
pulled
shame,
it.
man.
But due to home video releases like this one, what's called, that's where it was able to make its money.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, right?
So let's get in the movie. So
yeah, for sure.
So the movie opens up, like you said, we're open into Arborville. We get the B rolls of throughout the town.
Which makes you think the town's dead.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Well, they make sure you notice it's a small town in the middle of nowhere because you can tell the town is isolated.
Oh yeah.
When they zoom into the town, it's
Silent
right,
Hill looking.
Yeah,
you're just like, okay. So what did it originate from this small town, and then boom, the juxtaposition of no, here's a fully erupting football game.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, you're just giving me some atmosphere right off the bat. So cool.
Well, that's the thing is this movie has a lot of payoffs. Like it sets up and payoffs, and they definitely do that with this movie. When he can't open his jacket. Later, he can't open his jacket.
Yeah.
I mean, there's little things like that. Oh, the town's been isolated because the town itself is isolated from everybody. You know what I mean? It's kind of cool little things like that. We get introduced to some major characters in the film. We get the cheerleader, the jock, and the rebel, which we got Megan as the cheerleader. We got Paul being the jock, and then the rebel being Brian, which I think Kevin Dillon does a great job in this movie.
100%.
It's so weird that he really didn't take off that well after this movie because
I don't
he's
understand.
very lovable,
right? Obviously, his biggest role being Entourage.
Yeah.
Johnny Drama.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't understand how he got lost in the after this film and after another film I recommend, Remote Control.
Yeah, I gotta check that one out. Yeah.
And then I feel like he got lost, and somehow his brother, because of something about Mary, kind of just exploded onto the scene.
Yeah. And
I watched a Blob long before something about Mary and didn't make the brother connection even, right? Like it just didn't, maybe even my head said they were the same person.
Well, his brother, you got Singles.
Right.
Shit. I want to say the bully movie, but I can't remember what it's called. But where he's the kid's being bullied and he steps in and he becomes his friend. That's when he was young.
Oh yeah. The Outsiders, right?
Not The Outsiders.
Well, he's in it, or right? The one with the drive-in theater in Oklahoma, right? The Outsiders. Pretty sure he's in Outsiders, right? But that's the kind of thing where I'm just like, I kind of merge them together as the Dillons that are the same person.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah,
and I'm upset, like you said, that Kevin isn't getting more recognition because he plays this so earnestly, he owns this part, right?
And he's young in this movie. He's got
super
a baby
young,
face.
And throughout the whole movie, he is truly this loose cannon, right?
Yeah.
He does not fit the McQueen role.
Yeah.
Right? That is supposed to go to Paul, basically.
Which we basically...
And then it actually gets handed off to Shawnee Smith, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So he doesn't fit any true, trope, any, cliche of a character because... you don't even expect, like when he gets arrested, then he licks the cop's face.
Yeah.
You're just like, wait, what is this dude? Like, what is his deal? Right? Does he go to high school with them? Like, is he already graduated a year prior? Like, there's so much unspoken about him too that like I still have questions to this day, that like that's all because of the way he plays it, his performance, and how much that the script says no, just hold back on that. Like let's just let him, in the moment that we've like met him, prove himself to you as an audience member.
There's also,
instead of explaining it of who he was before. Who cares who he was before, right?
Well, also how the movie's going is we don't have time to explain people's backs.
Right.
We don't have time to
That's
that
true.
shit's going down, and we need to like, okay, we might have brief points in times of conversation back and forth. You know, his mom's not around because she's a drunk. His dad, no one knows who his dad is, and stuff like that. But we don't have time to like to dilly-dallying around.
And these are all like just side comments.
Yeah.
And I love that you brought that up, because another testament to this film is that like who we're seeing on the screen, right? They're all like better known actors from future movies before this, right?
Well, I put one down. What's his name? Art LaFleur. He's Megan's dad, but he's Babe Ruth, aka Babe Ruth, aka the Tooth Fairy from Santa Claus 2, or if you want to know him as the Molinator or Roy. I'm sorry, I had to bring that. The whole time I'm thinking,
you're right.
I've seen him. I was like, I'm just thinking of Santa Claus 2.
But every person, every actor, including Art, are character actors. There's like you can get lost or immersed in their roles, right? And this is one of the biggest like dichotomies to me of like when we were talking about the 3 remakes, right?
Yeah.
And the problem I have mostly with The Thing is that like like most of the actors, like they don't give me enough time. They don't give me enough time with Keith David for me to be like, you're second to last to like survive in this film.
Yeah.
Right. There's not a lot of Keith David in that film. He like disappears for like half of it.
When
they're doing all the blood tests and stuff. He's just gone. Right. But then he shows back up. And those who we do focus on, like just keep getting wiped out. But my other issue is that like I'm recognizing like Kurt Russell, and sometimes even this happens mostly with like, let's say Tom Hanks for me, right? Well, especially Tom Hanks' later roles. I don't see like him as Walt Disney anymore. I just see Tom Hanks.
No,
right?
Yeah.
It's very hard. I'm like, you're not Captain Phillips.
Yeah.
You know, you're
not Mr. Rogers. You're Tom Hanks.
Yeah, that was the worst one for me. I was like, you are not Mr. Rogers. I'm sorry. Like, I love you, Tom, but it's not happening.
I think that probably happened post Castaway. Probably.
Okay,
that's when that nail went down. Is like, okay, this is Tom Hanks,
right?
You know
because
what I mean?
It was hard for me. Was it The Terminal where he played like he had a Russian accent and stuff? It started getting hard for me to be like,
it was a fictitious country, but basically, something of that nature.
Right. But still, to bring it back to like The Thing and why this works so well is that like I see. Kurt Russell. I see some of the other actors. I'm like, I know you from this and that and that, right? Where this one, in the small amount of screen time that each one of these character actors get, like I'm immersed in them and I kind of care about them.
Well, that was the thing.
Right?
This movie's the people. That's the thing about this movie. Yes, we don't get a lot of backstory, but the people that get killed, besides 1 or 2, only deserve it. Everybody else is just a bystander, and they don't deserve dying at all, and you don't want them to die.
Right.
And it's brutal how they die.
Because they haven't done anything to deserve it, right? At least in, like, let's say the majority of slashers, like, they broke one of one of Randy's 3 rules, you know?
Yeah.
But in this, like, they literally are just like, "Hi, Marv, how you doing?" Right?
Oh,
and then the next scene is just like, "I'm dead." And you're like,
no.
Like,
and I think that's another thing is why this movie sits so heavy is because the people that die are literally innocent people that, holy shit, like this thing is ruthless.
And it hits them, like it just springs up on them every single time. It's not something where they're even warned about it other than until the final like street scenes. And they don't even know why they're being rounded up really.
Yeah,
like they haven't
100%.
seen it yet. Yeah. Only a handful of them have seen it. Maybe anybody that ran out of the theater and like they only got a glimpse and it was like, what the fuck was that?
100%,
yeah. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. So back to the storyline where after we get introduced to all our characters, a meteor we see is crashed into the woods. And this is when we get introduced to our homeless man, old man character. And after this scene, we move forward a little bit, and then we get the funny pharmacy scene.
Can I say before you go there?
Go ahead.
I do love a good like Buck Flower-ish homeless man. Like that seems to be a staple of the 80s. You know.
Well, apparently this if you look up this actor's portfolio, that's all he's ever played is old man.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like kind of like Buck Flower, like you know, the homeless man on the bench.
Yeah.
Goddamn drunk drivers.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, then we hit the doctor's office once they hit him with the car.
Yeah.
Right.
After that, we do get the funny rib scene. Did you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, you're right. So, and I wish that I could recall, because all of this really is dependent upon his goofy best friend.
Yeah,
right?
And the movie is, so this is where some of the camp comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Like the humor, but the camp humor is not like, oh my God, you're not doing that. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're not rolling your
It's
eyes
not
at
cheese.
it. It's not cheese. No.
It is true to form. Like it really is. You're like, I could see this happening.
100%.
Like two boys that like
100%.
because this is echoing another scene. We mentioned Halloween 4, and this will be twice now, right? where they're in the shop and she's like, fuck off, Wade. You know, like basically daring each other to like do whatever it is that they need to do to accomplish the next part of their journey, right? So I love that you have this one extremely misogynistic guy, right? And then this other guy who's kind of naive. He's the high school quarterback, but he ain't your typical cool quarterback, right? Which is straight up a misdirection setup, thinking you're like, oh, because he's the nice guy, he's going to be the hero that like has to step up, and you're like, no.
Keep on watching. Keep on
watching, man.
And once again, it gets back, set up, pay off. We meet the pharmacist, we get the preacher, we get to meet the weird, crazy preacher
too.
Oh my God.
Right?
That guy's, there's nothing worse than being like in actual not altercation, but a conversation where you see someone like a preacher or something like that, and they want to bring up that one thing that you don't want them to bring up. I haven't seen your church services lately. It's like, what, we really got to talk about that right now?
Yeah, right.
Like you gonna shame me right now? That's the first thing you're gonna do.
That is the plan. It happens more often than you would think. You know, but and that guy. What's interesting about him is that like he, to me, we're talking about the preacher, right? He feels like an everyday like town preacher, right? There's his look, the way his mannerisms are, right? But there is that like also just by looking at him being like, you do weird stuff at home, you know, like or as it turns out, it's like you're drunk.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. You find out like, oh, you got something hiding.
You got demons in your closet, right? So I really like I said, every single person is just nailing their character as a character actor.
Yeah, it was 100%. Like we can't talk enough about how the people that are put into this movie found their footing, and they're just running with it, and they're doing a great job.
Now, at the same time, I do wish that Art, the father, had maybe even one more scene. Like I wanted more from him. Yeah, maybe by the end.
Well, because I mean, like, you know, a lot of us, you know, growing up, we know him very popular from Sandlot and stuff like that. And then obviously, you know, he's tons of roles. Now lately, he's been in a bunch of bad movies. I like, you know, straight to video, like a lot of kids movies.
It'll happen to the best of us. Right? It'll happen to the Bruce Willis and all of us. Yeah. Sorry, that's dark.
But I understand what you're saying. Like, yeah, getting a little bit more from the dad and stuff like that. A little bit more.
Yeah, there's certain people you wanted more dynamic from just because, like, you were enjoying their presence to begin with.
No, right? Yeah, true.
Yeah. But that pays off, right? So, the boy that is going to take Meg out on a date, right? They're so nervous about the high school cheerleader that he goes up and he asks for ribbed condoms, right? Then runs into the pastor and but the pastor runs into the other guy and he's like, "Oh, these aren't for me; these are for him," right?
And his mannerism when he keeps on pointing up, he's like, "Let's go," and he's like, you know, He's got a lot of that teenage angst going
right.
on.
So his friend basically paints him as the misogynist that he is.
Yeah.
Right. And that pays off so well. And such a like it's not harped on. It is just it's a line. It's one word, right? Like ribbed.
Yeah.
You know? It's so great. Because obviously the payoff is that Paul goes to pick up Meg, and this was very close to the pharmacy being closed. So you can assume there was like a half an hour of gap of which I'm like, when is this pharmacy closed? Like, is it 9 or 6? Like, when is Paul picking Meg up? Right. And that's another thing where don't think about it too long, because I'm like, how long is this night? You know?
Yeah. No, it is true. Yeah. Because like, what movie was I watching the other night? I was watching another movie. I was watching Ernest Saves Christmas, and I feel like he's like, "Oh, it has to happen by a certain time," and then they make it adamant when you watch the film. What time is it? And then you see Santa Claus walk past a clock, and it says what time it is, and it's just like, man, it's been 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
It's only 2 minutes has passed.
Right. I feel like I'm watching a Tarantino movie here. There's like no time. It's just like, and what's funny, like skipping to the end real quick, is like even by the end, there's still no like sun up. Right.
Yeah,
Instead of like how long is this night? Right. So like, he goes to pick Meg up, and obviously they're like, I want you to meet my father.
Yeah.
And he brings down the paper, and there's the pharmacist.
Ribbed.
It's great. It's great.
But so Paul picks her up, and obviously they work that out, and you get some funny banter between him and Meg in the car. And they're driving, and they're going through like the woodland area, and then this is where we see our homeless guy again. Since we've met him, he has touched the meteor with a stick and gotten a blob,
it's
eating his hand off.
Right.
And this is a great scene with the scene before he gets hit by the car, and you see Brian runs into him in the woods, and you see him chop down on his hand with the axe. And then it just sucks back up because he wants the blood, which is cool. Another cool thing is, I didn't know this when I was younger, but obviously watching now, you learn more stuff. But like, the reason why it changes colors is because of the blood of the people. I was like, that is cool.
Right.
I didn't think about that.
I see it like the most blood rich after it straight up like burst the theater door in the alley open, and it just dumps out onto the thing. Well, and that's the most meatiest, bloody, like kind of ground beefy looking it looks.
And there's the awesome scene at the very end. And I wonder if this was done intentionally, but like at the very last scene of it, where they've been hitting it with like the fire extinguishers, it's almost like it's molting, and it busts out of its own shell, and it's a fresh blob underneath. I don't know. I don't remember you seen that. Like
I know what you're speaking of, because obviously it kind of I see it in a little finer detail when it tries to go under the freezer door.
Yeah.
Right. But just the fact that like I'm not even sure if I was a filmmaker that I would have thought that much detail. Like I just been like, here's the pink, KY jelly of the day, right? They're straight up like and again, if you go into the commentary, they talk about how they, from storyboarding days, were straight up being like, these are the rules of the Blob. This is what it can do. This is what.
Yeah, I saw that. It was in the
like
script. A 10 Commandments kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were like, the things that worked for us technically we kept, and the things that didn't on the script we didn't use, right?
Yeah.
And one of those things that didn't work visually that they so badly wanted to do was, that's what he was talking about, where he wished he could digitally reinsert, right, or insert into the film. Was he was like, I really wish that the concept of like, if we can shine light through the Blob, we'll see the skeletons of the people, right, in different like forms of decomposition.
Yeah.
And like while I like that concept, on like a 1 or 2 shot thing, like basically like the phone booth and seeing the sheriff melting away, right? Yeah. Which I'm not quite sure. Now that I'm bringing it up, we're jumping all over the place or whatever, right? But like bringing that up, I'm like, when did he get the sheriff? Because that's a almost full body right now. You know, like did he get him in that one moment before she went into the like? Was he standing on the corner and then he was like, he got the sheriff and then was like, phone booth.
Yeah, I don't know if he like is either when she contacted him prior, when she contacted I guess what is it?
Well, she contacted.
But he was already on his way there,
right? But that's what I mean is like it had to have gotten him in that one moment prior to that because he couldn't have fit the sheriff through the plumbing.
Well, and also,
right?
but mind you, this town, like the town's so small, I can almost tell you he probably could have walked to the diner instead of driving his car. That's how close the police department would have been.
Only my thing is like, because it was in the diner and then she busts a window out and like I said, we're skipping all around, but like she busts this window out and runs to the phone booth like, and it was chasing her.
Yeah.
Did it like see the sheriff on the street corner and was like, oh, hold on a second and grabbed
Probably.
him? That's what I'm thinking, right? Because like it's a great reveal, but there's little holes where you're like, well, how does, right? And again, don't think about it too much because like they established the rules of this blob, but they don't play it so hard that they need to visually show you what happened to the sheriff, right?
True.
You just go, well, I got him.
Well, that was another thing is that so in that scene when they showed the sheriff, they made it very important. They moved his badge up.
Oh, for sure.
So
like,
you knew you saw the badge,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because some people are like, well, they should know who the actor looks like, but they're like just to make sure. Now you know who it is.
And to me, it didn't look like him at that point.
Well,
right?
It was the
mouth
nose.
Was agape
the nose was the only thing
off.
that kind of told me is like because I remember like he has a distinctive nose.
Sure.
But yes, that one indicator of the sheriff badge.
Right.
Yeah.
That and her saying like trying to contact the sheriff at that exact moment is also pretty much an indication of who you're looking at.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, we hit the homeless man. We're at the doctor's office. We got to get moving because this movie moves a lot faster than we do.
So we get to the doctor's office, and basically, so they've admitted the homeless man, and then Paul wants to check on him, and he looks down the hall, and he sees his stomach rumbling or whatever. So he goes to investigate, and he just sees this massive bladder boil effect on his neck, and his eyes turn white. He runs to the doctor. He's like, "There's a man dying there." I'm with a patient. What are you talking about? There's a guy dying in there. And then they go to look at him, and this effect is like just things of nightmares. When they pull the sheet away and he's just dissolved from like the waist down.
Straight up acidy.
Oh my God, it's disgusting.
And they like the smoke effect and everything as if it like just happened.
Oh yeah. So we got this. So Paul takes off. He runs to call the sheriff, and he's like, "Listen here, there's a man been murdered. He's been killed. You need to come in here real quick." And this is when we basically get our Psycho style bait and switch, where the character we think is going to be the main lead through the entire film gets murdered. And then this is where the scene we were talking about earlier, where you see the blob drop from the ceiling on him.
That's like,
oh my God.
There's a reason why this is the cover art. Like this is the moment, right?
And that was
where like you now know what this thing is capable of in what 10 seconds.
Oh yeah, and then that was the last effect shot for the film. This is the very last one because this was the very first kill you actually fully see the blob kill somebody. This was the first one. And then their idea was, we know this is in the film. We're going to wait and film this last because we want to take all of the experience we've built through making this film and really go hard on that very first kill. And it worked. So
also, if we murder him by waterboarding him,
well, that's literally he's KY jelly and stuff was all going up in his mouth and his nose.
Yeah. Well, that's what they're saying. Like Chuck Russell was also saying like he's huge on safety, like on set and stuff like that, which is amazing. You know, like
it's crazy the fact that that's actually
this ain't no Twilight Zone. You know.
Oh God.
But sorry, my jokes are dark tonight. But
to be honest, I didn't learn about that until like a year ago.
Yeah. I learned. So I for anybody who don't know, we're talking about like the Twilight Zone,
the Landis information,
the John Landis accident,
right.
I learned about it through the Shudder series. They did the cursed.
That's how I learned about it,
right?
Yeah,
but my co-host on a show I did had referenced it prior to that, which sent me down like a Wikipedia rabbit hole one night, and I was like, "This guy's a piece of shit."
Well, that's like my dad. My dad. It's funny. Like if you ever meet my dad, he is the sweetest man you'll ever meet. But he's got all this movie knowledge, but he doesn't talk. He doesn't talk a lot. I mean,
so you can't get him on the show.
Oh no, yeah, I would love that. He would not be a good
he would talk.
He would just be like, "Yep, yep,
okay,
yep, okay." No.
Well, and then you got to ask him the questions and he'll give you the knowledge.
But I mean, that's the funny thing is like my dad knows all this film knowledge of like blaxploitation films, and because my dad grew up in the 50s and 60s.
See, that's awesome because for me, even there's a gap there, like mid 70s and before. There's major gaps that I don't even feel like I'll have the time to ever catch up on.
Yeah, my dad, he's full of all this knowledge, and it's just funny. It's just kind of like once he became a dad, he was just like, okay, well, I like
I'm dumping this knowledge.
Pretty much, he's like, I'm just gonna be a dad now.
Sure.
Like you know what I mean? Like I don't have hobbies anymore. I'm a dad. You know, because he like used to collect sport cars and stuff like that, and then so I mean, he was a blue collar man too.
So that's how you found out about the Landis thing? Is through your dad?
I found out through the Shudder thing, and then I called my dad. He goes, "Oh yeah," and then I well,
because it was like a televised, not fully televised trial, but like it was big.
Oh, it was a big deal,
right? Yeah,
it literally ruined his career. And Eddie Murphy's the only reason why he had a career after that.
Sure,
was because Coming to America, no one would hire him,
right? Yeah.
But yes, we're talking about the Blob.
Yeah, you're right. But to harken back to this is like, here's a director that absolutely cared about his actors. Was scared to, also talked about where he said that I would never ask an actor to be like, you're going to climb up to the top of like the studio set, you know, like Shawnee Smith is climbing that pipe in the sewers. He goes, I would never ask them to do that until I climbed up there and was like, am I scared by this or not? Right. So like, I think that's amazing respect for, you know, your talent, your crew, your actors, and just respect for safety, which I feel like, you know, before John Landis and after John Landis is still something that like is really an afterthought, Alec Baldwin. I to hear that like he was like so concerned to make sure that whenever they were dumping like blob ooze onto somebody, or they were doing this effect where they're pulling the whole like silk bags and over his face and stuff, like to the understanding that like this from like a standpoint of just suffocation, like is terrifying. Or the main leader of the government that gets sucked down into the manhole, right?
And Meadows or something like that.
Yeah, right. The black man.
I wrote his name down. I forgot what it was called.
And so do I. But like that whole like shot that's in reverse, that like the ooze is basically they filled his mask and then let it like
Meadows. It was Meadows.
Yeah, Meadows. All of that is the same kind of thing where they're like, well, yeah, this is terrifying. This ooze could suffocate you in a moment.
Oh yeah.
You know? So like, I love that kind of respect, and it truly shows the talent of the filmmakers and the special effects artists that like we got this shot and it looks as good as it does, and there's a combination of the actor being covered in it and then the melty face version that they did a cast for, right? And all of that. And the only thing about this scene that doesn't work for me is that it didn't get Shawnee Smith immediately after. It like left, it like rolled out, and I'm like, wait, you had another person, like actually a couple other people there you could have taken care of, right?
No, true.
Then the movie wouldn't continue.
Yeah. Because the idea is like, if it breathes, I must consume it.
That's what I would think.
That's
right?
It only knows to feed and feed only. That's all it knows. You know what I mean?
And then again, like, don't think about it too hard, because you're like, well, how does it know another person's in the room? Like, what is its receptors? Like, how is it able to chase you underground, under the sewers in water?
Yeah.
You know, like, but who cares? It's freaking fun.
Oh, no. Yeah. All right. So then we get to Scott, and him and his girlfriend Vicky are at a like makeout point.
Lovers lane
kind of issue.
But there's no lane. He was driving through grass, like.
It's like a looker's point over the town, and you get the vantage view of the hospital.
Which, another thing where I'm like, damn, where was this in my life? Like, so many towns had like lovers lanes, or
we didn't have that,
you know, or even the like lookout point that they like tap dance in La La Land, like in LA. I never went there even, like, and I'm like, that's gorgeous.
We had a parking lot of a grocery store that everyone hung out at.
Okay, everybody made out right there. Yeah, cars were rocking. You know, because I think about this movie. Or just that parking point that people had, right? You know, like that, or the whole car lineup in like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, right? We're just like, so many people just literally park here and they know what's up, like to the left and right of them.
What was it like? What was it like? In Night of the Creeps?
Yeah,
classic. Like, you know, everyone's just like, or Well, now Blood Rage, they're at the movie theater, so never mind. That makes
They
sense.
are, well, but that's actually, you bring up Blood Rage. That's a good point. Is to me, like, the drive-in would have felt like the place to do this.
Yeah,
right.
true.
But I guess if your town didn't have one, they built a Lover's Lane for you.
Yeah,
right. But anyway, he's up there, and like I said, this scene is cringe.
Oh, it's awful.
But
it's
at the exact same time, he is so fun.
Yeah,
as an
he's
actor to
very
watch,
comical. Yeah,
right. Like you're just like, all right, man, like do your thing, and you know he's gonna get it.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't feel as like if this was a different movie and it was very cringeworthy, right? Like if they didn't get their comeuppance until a different scene or something. But you've already seen the POV of the camera crawling through the grass into the car. Like you know that like something's happening while he's in the back trunk with his own full-on bar. By the way,
yeah, it's ridiculous.
Full-on bar, and then like multiple class rings so he can give them away to whatever girl he's trying to smash.
Funny because you get to see it as the blob moves away after he kills it. You see the shining.
Cool. But that's also at the same time establishing a rule of what it can and cannot dissolve.
Yeah.
Right. Which these little shots that you, like you said, pay off. Like it's basically saying like you're not going to be able to dissolve metal. It's not going to go through this. And so any questions you had about that, that's what it is.
It's basically organic materials.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it pays off really well. Like he tries to fondle her. She's not drunk and passed out. She's dead, actually.
Yeah, that's the thing is it basically goes inside her and eats her from the inside out, and then comes out of her through all her holes in her face.
So this is an interesting thing that happens in the film too, is that the blob picks and chooses how it wants to devour you.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Where sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm just going to cover myself all in you. And then other times it's like, what, I snuck up through your butthole? Like,
yeah.
I don't really know what's...
Also, the size it is at this point, like, you would know if it's in the car. It's humongous. It's big at this point.
It's at least the size of a human being at this point, right? Like, that's what I would judge it by. A human being or, like, at least a dog.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, because that's kind of where it was on the ceiling when it got Paul.
Yeah.
I would say it was, like, dog size.
Like a big dog. Though.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Like a bull mastiff or something like that. Yeah.
It grew massively by eating the homeless man.
Yeah.
Right. And then by eating Paul, we're not quite sure how much it ate of him, because it was, if you see it as Paul's like reaching out, you could see it flowing over him and out the window as if it like got him like as a snack, like drive-through stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So we're not quite sure how much it ate, because like that's another rule that isn't quite established. You just kind of leave it up to your own imagination, is like how much of a human being like can it exponentially grow per human.
Yeah.
Right. Because this is the last time that we see it as a major physical size until it bursts out of the plumbing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So did it grow in the sewers, in the plumbing? Like, how does it manifest?
Well, also,
and that's so cool to kind of wonder.
We never know that, like, through most of the movie, you're like, does it eat only people? But then I guess towards the end,
No, it gets those
starts
rats.
the rats in the sewer. Yeah.
Right. We never see a dog, and that's one of those things where, like, as I
which
think
I'm kind of
about
glad
it,
we didn't see. To be honest,
I don't like a dog kill, but a dog kill. Typically, like we think of like Halloween and things like that, right? It does indicate another level. Like, we as human beings can watch other humans in movies get devoured, get slashed up, anything. But like, as soon as the dog comes, and something happens to an animal that isn't a rat, right? Like, we start like really being like, oh, this thing's got to go.
Well, that's the one thing I'll bring this up. Like, I'm a big Stephen King fan, and when you actually get into his novels, his novels are intrusive thoughts on paper.
Sure.
That is 100% what they are.
Yeah, like child sex orgies.
Unfortunately, yes. But like, if it's like you think about certain things, like you can't touch this, you can't do that, you can't do that. He's like, oh, the hell if I can.
Yeah, nothing's off limits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that, like, it's good to have limits. And I am glad that, like, for example, like they didn't get a dog. But I mean, it's still like, we still know enough to what it does. We know what it needs to do. Now, it needs to feed.
I would say that if it didn't get the rats, then I would just connect my own dots and maybe say that much like how, like, for example, COVID doesn't attack other creatures, just us, right? Then I would have been like, oh, that's a really cool additional concept. This thing only, like, because it's a virus,
genetically
only
made.
wants human.
Yeah.
You know?
Which we find out later in the movie. But,
right.
Sorry.
So yeah, it gets that couple at Lover's Lane and then goes into the sewer system. Meanwhile, Paul's dead and they're arresting what's his face, Johnny
Brian.
Drama. Brian.
So
I'm bad with names.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
They arrest Brian and they take Meg back to her parents, and her parents are just straight up like, "Hey, just take this sleeping pill and just sleep it off. You didn't see anything."
No, and right? she's done with that.
And that's the turning point for her. That's like where you're like, oh,
no one's listening to me. I'm going to talk to someone who I know who's going to listen to me.
She's not a victim anymore.
Yeah.
She puts that sleeping pill on the stand and climbs out the window, and you're like, okay, now someone has stepped up.
Yeah.
Right? Because Brian still hasn't stepped up.
No. He hasn't become the hero yet.
No.
The hero that he doesn't know he can be.
Because most of the film, like we were saying, Brian is this loose cannon who's like, man, I'm out of here. Yeah. Right? So, So then, and that's where we are there, where, Meg escaped.
Yeah.
Escaped.
Oh, yeah. No, escapes her parents.
Right.
But yeah, so she hunts down Brian. Now we're at the restaurant, so we get the nice restaurant
They have
scene.
to let Brian go. Right?
They let Brian go because they have nothing they have nothing on him, and the sheriff actually believes him. He's like, I don't think he had anything to do with this. Just wrong place, wrong time, basically.
Right. I don't think Brian's capable of melting people, so we're gonna let him go.
Yeah. So they make their way to the restaurant, and basically we see Meg and Brian, and she's just like, listen, you gotta listen to me because no one else is listening to me.
Right.
And I know you were there, so you know
you saw
I'm telling
what
the truth.
I saw.
Exactly. Yeah. But in the meantimes, the Blob has made its way to the restaurant. And its first victim at the restaurant is the dishwasher. Mm-hmm. This scene's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. This scene is disgusting. The way it just pulls him into the drain and just blood spewing out of the pipes, which is funny because this movie's not very bloody.
No.
This is only there's like only 3 scenes where you see blood. Everything else is like mutated goo, basically.
Right, because you don't
or dissolved goo or whatever.
You don't get moments of blood because it, like, they establish in the Paul's death scene that, like, very much like the aliens in Alien, like there's something acidic about it, right? Like it drips, which it never is as drippy as that moment. No, right?
That's like the only time you ever see something like that.
I think it's only to establish visually that, like, that's how this thing works, right? It's to establish another rule, right? Being like, as soon as it hits you, it's like acid, which we were seeing with the homeless man, obviously, but, like, I think that drives it home, being like, look at the desk, it's literally dripping through the desk. So when we see it, when we see the blood that we see, it's because either somebody hurt themselves, like the blood smeared in the telephone booth. Mm-hmm. It's just her must have cut herself on the windows as she was smashing it, right? Mm-hmm. But the blood here that we're seeing is because we're forcibly forcing a body through a 1-inch piece of plumbing.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's
that's why blood's going everywhere. It's because it's pulling him as a full-on human being into this pipe. And it's not only an amazing reverse shot, but the practical puppetry of it, like, almost as if it's a hand. Like, sometimes this thing, like, will create tentacles. Sometimes it creates a full-on, like, grabbing type hand, right? And that's the other thing where, like, how smart is this thing? Like, it literally adapts to its environment. It knows how to, the best way possible to get you, right? Which is terrifying. When
it's a predator,
right?
It was a man-built predator, basically.
So it grabs his face and pulls the head into the pot to the garbage disposal, which also is just a fear in itself of sticking your hand into a garbage disposal. Oh, yeah, right?
100%.
Like that for most people. So the fact that something actually does come of that, that invokes, there's 2 things, this and the movie theater, that invoke, like, I'm going to think about this every time I go kind of thing, or, something like that.
Oh,
like
no,
inherent fears, right? So they use this balloon as his head for that practical effect. They painted up a balloon, and that's
the
what
dummy
gets
head,
forced into that, right? And then and this is part of the special effects kind of 30-minute like montage where they were filming like their test stuff. They show the foot, the arm, and I don't know if it's another foot or another arm, right? But like the 3 body parts that are now spinning around in the sink with a POV.
It's 2 feet and an arm, because also when you think about it, like how in the world is that even there?
Right, it's just bunging him in at this point, right? So like that's a great shot too, because you have all that going on the foreground, and then you have Brian and Meg and the waitress all in a depth of field shot, right? That are witnessing it in just complete awe, which I don't blame them. I'd be like, what the fuck is this?
No, true.
Right? So like, of course, it takes them all down. They're still shocked, and the thing just explodes out of the plumbing like it didn't just eat a human body.
Oh, 100%.
Right? And is up on the ceiling, and they scatter in 2 different directions.
Yeah.
Right?
So they make their way to the fridge, and that's when we get the first instance that it doesn't like the cold. And so it leaves them because it can't get in the fridge because it doesn't like the cold, and then it heads after the waitress.
Which is truly the only indicator in the entire movie that it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's it. If you blink and or had to use the bathroom at that moment or something like that, you miss how they know that altogether, because it never happens until the fire extinguishers again.
Exactly, at the end, which is Meg finds that out.
Yeah.
So it hunts out the waitress. We talked about it earlier. We get the famous phone booth scene,
which is
just completely explodes and devours her.
Can I talk about that real quick though? Yeah. Like just from a standpoint of how they did that one. The top down shot.
Yeah, it was like a 3-foot doll.
Yeah, she was a doll, but they also filmed her, but just didn't have the same like effect.
Oh yeah.
And because it had to be such a quick shot for her own safety, it didn't seem to work as best. So they did like a 3-foot miniature of the phone booth and the doll and everything, and then covering it with the blob and using just like air cannons, just exploded it in to that top-down shot, and then filmed it at like 120 frames per second so that they could speed up the footage.
Gotcha.
Right? And like all of that, again, camera tricks, things that you take for granted because you've seen a million movies, but like there it is, and it is brutal.
Oh, it's very brutal. That's one thing. That's the key taker from this film is it is brutal.
Brutality.
Brutal.
Yeah, right? Brutality, but like not from a human being.
Gotcha.
Right, which makes it even scarier.
I mean, yeah, that's
like
true.
We're saying, like the blob in this film versus the 58, right, is that it's not just oozing piece of jam, right? It's not jelly, right? It is its own character, and you can't quite figure out what its animalistic instincts are, like how it works or anything. All you can do is run.
Yeah.
Run.
True.
Right? And that is the core being of this film is like somebody encounters it, and they're 9 times out of 10 not going to make it.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's that thing is like, the only people that have literally gotten away from it physically that have encountered it was Meg and Brian.
Sure.
Basically.
Right. So they, because they were in the freezer, and the blob went in its own path, they get away scot-free. But there are remnants of the blob that are crystallized that the pastor stumbles onto.
Yeah.
Right. And he's already he saw the blob enter the sewer after killing the woman in the phone booth. And he's already like, oh God, the Armageddon is here upon us. And you're like, yeah, maybe, but also just be like, what the hell was that instead? Right. Like you immediately jump to Armageddon. Right.
Yeah.
So, he collects some of those crystals. Right. And it's a payoff that is like really cool by the end. If we skipped it in.
No. Yeah.
But, at the exact same time, I always am like, I wanted that sequel, which we'll touch on in a bit. But, so where are we? Where they stumble onto the government, right?
So where we're at is Brian and Meg have ran to the sheriff's office. They can't get a hold of the sheriff, and the operator's there, and they're like, we can't get hold of anybody. It's static. So that's when they make their way to Elk's Grove, because that is where the incident took place. And that's when we find out that there's people in hazmat suits that are from some kind of task force that they don't understand and they've never heard of before. And they're basically telling them there might be a virus attached to the meteor. And we're just kind of telling everybody we're going to quarantine the town because we've been training all our life for this event, and it finally happened. We know meteor killed the dinosaurs. We don't know how. This might be the reason why they killed the dinosaurs, but we don't know. So they're like, okay, I don't really know if we should trust you because I've never heard of this task force and it is from the government. So some people are kind of wondering about like fishiness about the government in the 80s.
Sure. But
so
it's
that
such
makes
a
sense.
weird, like, additional through line to give to us as an audience, right? Because, like, I'm fully okay with that explanation. Right? I'm fully okay with it being like, yes, this wiped out the dinosaurs and then the ice age came and thus there's a frozen blob in Antarctica already.
Exactly.
Right? I'd be cool with that.
Yeah.
Right? But that isn't what actually the reveal is. So like now you've compounded in this misdirection to us, right? That makes you go like, well, is that truly still his theory, like that it's wrapped into that? How much does he believe versus does he lie?
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot going on
they're definitely,
in this conspiracy portion of the film.
Oh, no, they're definitely asking questions. And that brings, Brian doesn't believe them. Then Meg kind of believes them. So they're going to make they're going to send them home.
Right.
Because the town's been quarantined. And Brian's like, listen here. If you want to go, you can go. I ain't going.
Right.
Basically, they put them in a vehicle to send them back into town, and everyone's going to the city town hall. And basically, Brian's like, all right,
You carry a socket wrench on you at all times, by the way?
I don't.
Well, I mean, yes, he's repairing the motorcycle, but still, like, you don't carry a socket wrench everywhere you go, right? But that's how he gets out of there. He gets out, and
we get the whole little thing is like, you're always good at looking after yourself. And he's like, well, no one else did, so it might as well be me.
Right.
And you get that little through line, like, okay, I get where he's coming from. And he's like, but you can come with me, and we can save each other.
Right.
But I ain't got nothing here. But she's got her family there, so she cares.
Sure.
So she goes back to town, and
he goes back to the site.
Yeah, he
crash site.
Well, because he's trying to get his bike.
Right.
Yeah, so he goes back to the crash site. She goes to town, and then we find out that everyone's being sent to City Hall, and that's where they're going to set the quarantine, and they're going by section. That's task force to make basically make sure everyone is located in the center of the town so everyone will be accounted for. And then in the meantime, Meg's brother's been at the movie theater, and they're freaking out because they did the classic, I'm going on your house, you tell them you're going on my house.
Yeah, right.
So they get they're stuck at the movie theater.
Watching some like Friday the 13th ripoff.
It is
right?
Garden House Massacre.
Garden House Massacre.
Yeah,
and I love it. I'm like, make that movie. Just do it. Like
so now let's go to the theater.
Because it's a hedge trimmer he's using.
wait, who changes their hedges at nighttime?
Yeah, man, it's great.
And he's wearing a hockey mask. He's like, hockey season ended 2 seasons ago.
Do you remember, Monster Squad?
Yeah.
Right? Where he's watching from his roof, the drive-in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, these two fake slashers, I'm like, I want to see them.
There's another good one. I'm bringing it up now. Under Wraps. There's a fake horror villain like Jason Voorhees in that movie because that's the villain he's obsessed with. And but for a Disney kids movie to put a fake horror movie on the movie, it's great.
Dude, I love movies within movies that like aren't like
there's
real.
a scene where a knife falls in the garbage disposal and it turns on, and the fake villain in that movie that we're watching on the Disney Channel takes the woman's head, and you don't see it, but that's what you imply. She's shoving the head into the knife that's in the garbage disposal. So
little bit of like on that, there's a film 1987 called American Drive-In, right? Garbage movie. Like I wish I could recommend it because I love things set in movie theaters, right? Which is another reason why I love this movie so much. Like Matinee or Popcorn, things like that. I love movies set in a movie theater. I love the environment. So I bought the
Demons.
Yes, exactly.
Great.
Right. So I bought American Drive-In on tape, and that's where it'll sit on my shelf for the rest of my life. I'll never watch it again. Right. But American Drive-In, this director was like, well, I don't want to use I don't want to superimpose the image on the drive-in, so let's just project a film on there, and we don't have the rights to anything, so they made Rock and Roll Zombies, right? They made that movie for that film, right? And then people who came and bought a ticket to American Drive-In was like, I like that movie on the screen better. Like, where is that? And so they actually released that film.
Oh, that's cool.
As, Rock and Roll Zombies.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Right. So it's like one of these rare instances where a film made a film just so they could have something on a movie screen or a TV screen, and then was like, oh, let's release that film as well.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'm over here being like, release Garden
House Massacre.
Garden House Massacre.
I think that's what it's called, but something like that. I can't remember.
Right. Like, I love it. But yeah, films set within a theater environment. And some of them are way better than others. There's Movie House Massacre, or Blood Theater, and that's a lot of fun. Like I said, Matinee, the John Goodman, Joe Dante movie. I love these instances where the majority of the film is set in a movie theater, because if I'm in the movie theater watching it, I get just like the director of the Blob goes into saying, when I first screened this for an audience, I witnessed at least half the audience, when the Blob attacks the theater, immediately turn around to the projection booth just by instinct of just being like, is the Blob here? Right? And so I personally, when I used to volunteer at the Frida Cinema, and they asked, I won Volunteer of the Month, right? And this is the movie I screened with Tremors, right? So when I screened this, I'm sitting dead center, right in the movie theater, and immediately as the boys pulling on the exit doors, which who chains an exit door, by the way, but still he's pulling on the exit door. I'm over here still I've seen this movie a million times, and I'm looking in my own theater being like, where are my exits? The Blob showed up. There's something I don't know, it's instinct. It's when you're in an environment that you're also witnessing something bad happening on screen, you immediately channel that, right? So I love this. This is one of my favorite scenes of the entire movie.
Oh, it's
this
great.
Attack. The score is pounding.
Well, the projectionist, the kill from the projectionist is great.
Yeah. It's veiny because he's not even half finished devouring him. No. Right? Before it gets the next guy, the manager.
Yeah.
Right?
It gets the heckler guy. It gets the heckler guy after that.
Yep.
And then this is when basically Meg shows up and is trying to save her brother.
And the heckler's the other guy, basically, that we were talking about, that is deserving of the kill. Yeah. Right? And even then, it's not super deserving.
He doesn't deserve to die.
But we're rooting. As soon as he gets it, we're like, yeah, fuck that guy. Right? Meg shows up, and there's the fiance of the special effects director is the woman who's half melted on the carpet.
I remember reading that. Yeah.
And that's super cool. He's like, yeah, I met my wife right there, as I was melting her face off.
Yeah.
Right. And just obviously the Blob wouldn't there wouldn't be that strobe effect, but it works, right? It just adds to the chaos that is happening. And just people are literally getting ripped out of their chairs by tentacles, and they're running all over the place, and it's so cool. And every time I watch it, I think to myself, I'm like, I remember the scene being longer, more chaos, more, right? And it's not super long.
No, because
right? But it's effective.
No, it's very effective, and then I think it leads into the most effective scene. To be honest, if we want to talk about the sewer, yeah. So Meg and her brother and Teddy, his friend, get out of the theater. They head to the sewer, and we basically get to a point where they've almost gotten away.
Oh, that's where I was saying that they closed that giant iron door of the theater behind them, and that's where his jacket gets stuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And as soon as they free him and those bolts just
explode,
pow, 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 right? That's, to me, another one of those moments, just like the telephone booth, where it pushes its way out that door and just slams that iron door up against the brick wall, and it just dumps out into the alley.
Oh, it's great.
You're like, this thing is just unstoppable.
And then when it gets to the sewer, this sewer, I want to speed up a little bit, but like when it gets to the sewer, it goes in and we get one of the number one rules: you don't kill kids, and Teddy gets it. He gets completely dissolved.
There's your dog moment, basically, right?
There's your dog moment. And you know, she gets her brother to safety, so she is being the heroine that she knows she can be. Meg gets her brother to safety, and she's trying to fit through, and it's not going to work. And basically, she ends up falling down, going out the other end, and that's when.
But hold on, because this is like I want to at least talk about the shot, the overhead shot of literally. In my opinion,
this was the animatronic section,
right? In my opinion. I think the Blob never looks bigger than this moment.
No, yeah, it's
right.
Pretty big.
Like I think it looks bigger here than it does as the giant Christmas tree.
Yeah, then it flops over and breaks all the glass.
I think this thing, as it opens up its jowls, right?
Yeah.
It basically makes its own mouth, as if it's just like, come on, fall into my mouth, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It looks massive on this giant set, right? And it's all miniatures, right? It was a hand puppet. That
it was
open up very Audrey 2 like, because the maker of Audrey 2 worked on this as well.
Yeah, it's basically like I said,
it's an animatronic.
a lot of the things they said, they used it like if the average person was 3 feet tall,
right,
or so forth. That's what would be the comparison, because the movie theater scene, movie theater seats are this big.
Right.
So
and
like, a lot of this stuff is all like, you know,
right?
It's crazy because it's like bare bones, like I said, bare bones special effects.
Right.
But the way you use what you know, it's fantastic.
And it would have got her in that moment if like 3 of the government guys weren't like firing their like
and that's great. They
rifles
show up
at them, right?
Yeah.
And so it goes after them, and she's able to fall because she was going to fall anyway. She falls in the water and is able to escape with Brian.
Brian shows up in his motorcycle because he's run off into the sewer system.
Another one where I'm like, how do you know where she was?
I think that was just acts. You know, he just heard things going on. He just went into the sewer system, get away from the helicopters.
Sure.
And then that's when he ends up finding her. So Brian ends up getting Meg to safety, and then we end up running into another scientist,
Bill Moseley.
I was about to say it. Did you know it was Bill Moseley?
Yeah.
He's in it. He's half of his arm's been disintegrated, and they are trapped. We find out the government has no need to release them because they want to quarantine the Blob. So Brian brings himself. He's like, okay, I see a rocket launcher.
Right, because they chud them.
Yeah,
right. They literally roll a vehicle over the manhole.
100%. Yeah,
right, and just like in Chud, the end of Chud.
And what was another movie I was watching? Same thing happened where a woman runs out. What movie was it? I was watching another movie the other day where someone was in the sewer system, and a woman runs out and tells the woman, she's like, "Move your car, move your car," and it wasn't Chud though, because shit.
Well, you know,
it's some movie, whatever. But anyway, so they end up basically blowing the man cover off.
Right.
And
rocket launcher, man.
Brian comes out and he just basically explains to the townspeople.
Oh, this scene's so cool, like from a tension standpoint, because you really don't know what's going to happen.
Dr. Meadows is basically saying, this guy is infected. Don't get close to him. He's jeopardizing your health.
Right.
And he's just like, they've been lying to you this entire time. Okay, this thing was man-made. It did not come from outer space.
Right. And we're in a 3-way standoff between like Meadows?
Dr. Meadows and Briggs.
Right.
Briggs, the guy that doesn't like
the cop
Brian.
Who you're like, I don't know what way you're going to go by the end of it. Are you going to be a dick, or are you going to like help save the day, right? So like, we're in a 3-way standoff where Brian is got a gun pointed at Meadows and Briggs is pointing at Brian, being like, if you pull that trigger, I got to pull the trigger. Yeah. Right. And like, it is so tenseful, but the exact same time you're like, wait a minute. We are not acknowledging the thing that is underneath all of you right now.
Then it explodes. No, wait, no.
No, it grabs Meadows.
It grabs Meadows and pulls him in. And those ragdoll, like the way his body just shakes and just breaks down.
It explodes into his face mask and then pulls him.
It's great.
And it breaks the gun.
It breaks the gun in half.
Snaps the gun in half, right?
So like I said, like he's a ragdoll.
God, this thing is like unstoppable, man. It doesn't matter, right? But and then the government guys just straight up are like, let's shoot this motherfucker. And I'm like, you guys already know this doesn't work. Why? Now you're just kind of taking out your aggression.
They think they're going to blow it up, so they put a short fuse explosive in there, and it doesn't do nothing. And then we get the Christmas tree effect that you said.
Pissed it off, right? And you're like, oh man, this is crazy. Yeah, the Christmas tree.
Yeah, it ransacks through the town, and and it goes through literally every person it can get. It's almost like silly putty. Once it there's one part where it smacks on a guy and then just pulls him right up, and it's stuck to him like silly putty. Everyone's running basically to town hall to barricade themselves.
Did you see the when the Christmas tree comes up and then it falls on the guy with the grenades?
Yeah.
Did you see like 2 shots later?
Yeah,
the explosions like
they'll
within
let you know
it,
it didn't do
meant
nothing. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah, and then so after that we go to the town hall, and then this is when Meg finds out why she's basically running backwards to use the fire extinguisher, and
because the preacher catches on fire.
Yes.
Because this thing literally plugs up the hole of a flamethrower.
Fire can't kill it,
right? But it literally creates its own tentacle and is like, let me just plug that like nozzle of the flamethrower, which explodes the guy with the flamethrower, and then I'm guessing liquid that's inflamed gets on the preacher as well, and he's full on engulfed in flames.
Yeah,
right.
It's fantastic.
Chaos, man, total chaos.
We board ourselves up in town hall, and everyone's like, the cold kills it. So then Brian understands that, okay, well, I got a snowblower.
Right.
Let me go, a snowmaker machine or whatever.
Right.
So he runs and gets a snowmaker machine. He comes in, which I think this part, what's called, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think it's kind of dumb because it makes no sense. It's hurting it.
The snowmaker?
It's hurting it.
You think the snowmaker itself is dumb?
No, it's hurting it, but he decides to drive the truck into the blob to not like.
Oh, and then it just kind of tips over.
Why don't you just sit there? You're hurting it. Why are you driving into it? Like it doesn't make any sense.
What it's there is to set up that he is not the full-on hero. Shawnee's still gotta get her Ellen Ripley moment, just being like, right? And you're like, yeah, okay, cool.
Well, this is when we get our scene. They're like, before this, I want to real quick. So then Briggs is in there. He's trying to barricade the door. We get the perfect sandwich scene. Basically cracks his back in half, pulls through the door.
Which I've seen clips of them making that too.
That was pretty cool, yeah.
It's another just amazing effect where it's like, all right, Briggs, you just sit in the
and we
shelf,
pull your legs in,
right? And your legs are fake,
yeah,
right? And you just get pulled in with the legs that are attached to the rest of your costume. What it's just so... Like it works so well on something so freaking simple, right?
True.
That as a child and even now as an adult, I'm still like amazed by that. All these things that we've talked about this entire episode, like work so well that we're about to approach 40 years with this film in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Like 40 years later, I'm still like amazed by what they were able to accomplish without it ever looking cheese.
Oh, 100%. No, like I said, this movie it's got a little bit of camp, but it's just for the humor. There is no cheese.
No.
But that scene is horrific. So after that takes place, we get Meg, she runs out, she leaves, and she's got an idea. She goes, I'm going to blow up the freaking snow machine.
Right.
And that's what we're going to do. So she comes in, she gets its attention over because it's about to kill Dylan. It's about to kill Brian.
Which they called them, same as the telephone booth, like when Brian is basically engulfed in Blob on all sides of the window, they called them like fish tank scenes.
Yeah.
Right? Where they would enclose you in a box of glass and just pour it all over you.
Yeah.
Really cool. Just like, you're like this, and it works.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And then, so she finds a gun, gets the attention away, and they have this cool badass scene of her figure out how to shoot it. She shoots a couple rounds into it, and
only to really distract it. I think she knows it.
Yeah. She's just trying to get its attention. She runs over there, and she gets her super cool line. She jumps on top, throw the charge in, and then her foot gets caught, and that gives us enough time. So the Blob's going after her. Brian's able to get loose, and he grabs her foot out from underneath it, and then it blows up the snow machine and crystallizes the Blob everywhere.
Right,
and we get our nice little first ending, if you will, and it's to wrap it short, it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
The ending is great. Yes, you could ask some questions or whatever, but you got I don't know, like you said, you got a great hero as what's a female heroine?
Yeah.
Great heroine.
Yeah.
And then then Brian shows up to party. Shows up party. he shows up. He mans up.
Party in the back.
Yeah.
Business in the front.
Yeah.
But what is that ending? You didn't mention the stinger, the cold close.
The cold close is you got the preacher who now is freaking crazy,
right? And like also another really cool just makeup effect.
Oh yeah,
that
great.
Like sells it. What is it? The white eye. Right?
Yeah, the white eye. He has got a patch on his glasses,
but he's just as creepy with the patch on the glasses.
Yeah.
I think that's creepier than a regular patch.
Yeah,
But yeah, now he's preaching in some desert,
which would make sense.
Revival tent,
which would make sense because this movie was shot in Louisiana, so like that is something popular in the Bible Belt in those southern states. We don't know that this is actual Louisiana. I'm just saying. It would make sense if this was a Louisiana.
It felt like any small American town, and that's what I like about it too.
No, yeah. And then so we get, the scene of like basically, whenever the Lord tells him.
When's the Lord coming?
Yeah.
And it's like soon kind of stuff. Right?
Well, he's going to start Armageddon.
Right. And it's the only effect for me that now that they pointed it out, it doesn't work for me.
With the prosthetic hand holding the gold.
Right. Yeah. And I just as a kid, I didn't really like I thought it was his hand.
Watching on VHS, you're not going to notice that.
But now, I saw it and you can actually see the rod between his fingertips up through the jar. Yeah. And I'm like, they must have shot this in a hurry, after a stinger or something, an afterthought, because everything else has so much attention to detail. I'm like, why would you miss that? You guys have been thorough, right? So something there, and they didn't really go into it other than being like, damn it, there's that shot, right? So I love it. I always, real quick, to you. Where could they go if they set it up for a sequel that never happened? Mm-hmm. Where could they go?
I don't know. I mean, I do know. I was telling you a little bit before that there was words of doing another remake of it,
and you said Rob Zombie.
Yeah,
right?
That was different. Basically, the Blob was going to make mutated zombies of blobs. And they were going to attack the town. It was going to be at a rock show and something like that. And there's artwork. You can look artwork online of it and stuff like that. But I don't think that would have been good at all. That just sounds like the plot
of Grizzly 2. Literally where it's we're going to do the same thing again, but there's a rock show and that's what the Grizzly's going to terrorize.
Well, this right? They would be blob people.
Right.
And that sounds kind of dumb.
Yeah, that is dumb. For me, I literally would just take it from that beat. The pastor dies and all his belongings are collected up, and straight up like Critters 2, they just stumble upon that and the whole thing starts over again.
Yeah.
And I think that that's valid. And the only way that you top it, the original is just it's bigger than ever before. It's as big as the size of a boat.
Yeah.
Something like that where now the government does have to step in and they get their asses handed to them because now that's one of my favorite tropes in American cinema is Independence Day where they're like, yeah, we got this. And it's you don't got it at all.
No, not one bit.
And that's the levels that I would elevate it. But for the most part, beat for beat, just do the same thing just to elevate the horror.
Yeah.
That's where I would do it. Yeah. So how do we wrap this up?
It's a great.
Yeah. How do you wrap your show?
No, you're fine. That's it. We usually just finish it. We're just all right. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, really? Okay. So, for me, like I said, second place out of the 3 remakes.
Yeah.
It's very hard to beat The Fly.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of the performances of Goldblum, Gina Davis.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just obviously Cronenberg's and the special effects there.
Yeah.
It's super hard. Plus, when you look at The Fly, that movie is super cheese.
Yeah.
Right, like at least the Blob 58 tries to take itself seriously.
Yeah, no.
Like the Fly is just straight up like monster movie. I got a mask on, you know.
Yeah, true.
So for them to like top that, that and the Thing both do really well at being forget the original.
Well, I will say the Thing is probably the most watchable out of all of the originals.
Yeah,
I will say,
if you're gonna
rewatch the original, I think the Thing itself. And that's another thing. They try to make it clear, well, then they made the Thing remake, and they try to make that clear that it wasn't
the prequel.
Exactly. It was the other Outpost and stuff like that.
I just recently watched that, and it works. And, you know, there's the CGI.
Well,
you're like,
they made prosthetics for everything.
See, and that's the hardest part when we talk about if we did a sequel to this. Like, how much of it would they just straight up like be lazy and do the CGI?
Yeah,
and that's where I'm like, don't do it. Don't make a sequel. Especially don't do a remake. There's no need to remake the remake.
True.
You know, I never feel like you need to triple remake.
Yeah.
You know, like we don't need to Star is Born this shit. You know, but at the exact same time, I think a sequel, a sequel set today even. Right, like I said, the pastor dies, and we found all this shit at a yard sale. And they're like, "What are these crystals or whatever?" You know, anything like that is enough to like just set off the same chain of events. It all starts all over again, and we've seen hundreds of movies like that like we love. So,
no, yeah, it's great, and I will say, like, as far as like, I will say I would put this as 2, Thing being the first.
Okay.
And I do like The Fly, but as far as like watchability and like just putting in and just running it, I will say I watched The Fly the least amount of the 3.
Okay.
Even though I understand what it is, I'm just saying as far as like, what am I going to put on?
Right.
The Fly is going to be the 3rd. It's great. Don't get me wrong. But as far as me watching it, yeah, this one's the most watchable, but I will say that I've watched The Thing so many times.
Got it.
So many times. And I just, it's, I don't know. There's just something about The Thing, and Rob Bottin's special effects are just chef's kiss. Fantastic. But this movie, it is a contender. I definitely think it should be respected on that level as far as up there on the same shelf with all 3.
Absolutely. And with that being said, if you agree with us, please come see it on January 14th.
Yes, January 14th.
At Crypt Con. Yeah, so if you're in the Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia area, even that far, come travel if you'd like to, and come see the Blob or just attend Crypt Video Con altogether.
Yeah, we'll be there. Video Villa, me 100%. And Becca will be there. That is the episode. I would like to thank everybody for joining us. I'd like to thank my guest, Jonathan, today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Like I said, if you're new here, please like, share, and subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, please like and write a review. That literally helps us streamline our episodes and getting to new people's hands and fingertips. All that would be greatly appreciated. And that is it for today. Thank you guys. Have a good one.